my channel. My name is Shachita. I'm an Indian now living in Paris, and in today's video we will be talking about some random facts about living in Paris that have come as a surprise to me and might come as a surprise to you depending on where you're from. My reference point is India, but yeah, these facts may or may not come as a surprise to you depending on where you're living. So if you're interested in knowing that, then please keep on watching. And if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to my channel. On this channel we talk about home styling, fashion, beauty, and in general facts about living in Paris. So if that's something of your interest, then please consider subscribing to my channel, and let's get started. Number one is bureaucracy. The French bureaucracy is quite notorious for being lengthy and requiring a lot of paperwork. Simple admin tasks here can take a lot of your time and may require a lot of paperwork. So this might come as a shock to you if you're from some place where things flow easily, especially when it comes to official paperworks or legal bits. But that's not the case in France. They take their own sweet time to do things. If you're from India, you can kind of relate it to SBI, the way things work at SBI. That's kind of how things work here in France. Number two is customer service. Customer service here can sometimes feel less friendly and more formal, especially if you're coming from India, where we are quite used to customer service being super polite and friendly. This might come as a shocker to you because people here are not so polite, especially if you are not polite to them. So yeah, that's also something that I found different here. Number three is dining out. Dining out can be really expensive in Paris, especially if you're living here in Paris. That can add to your overall weekly budget. And tipping here is not that common. So people here do not, especially the locals here, are not used to tipping, especially because the service charge is already included in the overall bill. So that's not a common practice in France. Number four is elevators. Now this is something that I already knew, but I didn't expect it to be that small. Elevators are extremely small here, extremely, if at all. So a lot of buildings here are quite old. As you might know, they are from 15th or 16th century buildings that are still holding up, and that is the reason why a lot of these buildings do not have elevator. So you might find yourself in using stairs more often than not. But even if they have, the elevators are notoriously tiny here, and you can hardly fit like 2 or 3 people in an elevator. That would be the most common size here. Number five is public restrooms. Now this is something that I constantly struggle with. I thought that in Europe public restrooms would be easier, but turns out it's not that accessible here. You don't have a lot of public restrooms. So yeah, you only have free access to the ones that are there in a mall, and if you're out dining at a restaurant, you may have access to public restrooms. Otherwise it's not that common to have public restrooms here. Number six is Sunday closures. A lot of stores here, other than some basic grocery stores, are closed on Sundays. So you should always kind of Google before you're going to or heading to any particular store. That's not the case inside malls. Malls are usually open, the shops inside the malls are usually open. But if you're looking to go to a certain standalone shop, then it's better if you can just Google and find out if it's open on Sunday or not. Number seven is the baguette culture. The baguette here is basically holds a great importance in their daily life. Especially the locals here love to have fresh baguettes, especially usually in the morning. Now this is something I would often see in my reels before I came here, of people carrying baguettes in their tote bags, and I thought it's just like for for video purposes or something like that. But turns out that's not the case. If you go out in the morning around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, especially during office hours, you will see a lot of people, especially wearing formals and having like a baguette in hand, and they just like to have their baguette like a morning snack. before heading to work. So that's something very common here. Number 8 is social etiquettes. Now people here often like to greet each other with cheek kisses, especially when you're meeting somebody over lunch or dinner. Even in professional settings they do that, so that's a very common thing in Paris. Number 9 is language barrier. While many Parisians speak English or are well versed with English language, there's a strong cultural preference for French, and yeah, it's quite common to meet people, or especially if you're out buying groceries, it's very common to have people or to meet people who do not speak English at all, or who do not even understand English at all. So that's a very common occurrence here, especially if you're visiting or buying groceries from a place which is not very close to these touristy spots. Usually around these touristy spots people will speak English, but that's not the case if you go to suburbs or if you go to any place that does not have these touristy spots around it. Number 10 are strikes. Now strikes are quite frequent in Paris and can actually disrupt the transport service or other services. So that's something very common here. Often these are done on a very short notice, if at all. So that's something that came as a shocker to me. Number 11 is heating. Many older buildings here have a central heating system, which means these are basically controlled by the building and can often work only few months in a year depending on the weather and a lot of other factors. So you might not have a lot of control over the heating system. Number 12 are recycling rules. Now, just like any other country, here the recycling rules are also similar. You have to kind of segregate the recyclable and other bits when you're segregating waste, but I will say that I didn't find it as strict, I think, as I've heard in the US. So that's something to note. But yeah, you do have the recyclable option here as well. And in fact, the other thing that I would add to this is I've found that most of the packets here, if not all, are recyclable, which is a good thing. And even Amazon here uses as less carton as possible. So that's one thing that I really like about Paris. Number 13 is public transportation. Public transportation here is super accessible, especially if you're living within Paris. But while it is super accessible, it can also be overwhelming if you are not that familiar with metro lines and the systems, because of its numerous lines and connections. And a lot of these times a lot of metro stations can be closed, so you might have to figure that out while you're moving from A to B point. Number 14 is fashion sense. The fashion sense of people here is just top notch. Like you will find even people in their late 60s, 70s being really well dressed, especially ladies. They have like such amazing fashion sense, even if they are just stepping out for grocery. Oh, by the way, people do not step out in sweats here. That's not that common in Paris, unless you're actually going out for a run or a walk or something like that. So people really like to put some effort here and dress up, even if you're just going out to get groceries. Number 15 is dining or lunch hours. Lunch and dining hours are usually very specific. So they do not like to entertain people between this time. Often a lot of restaurants are actually closed between 3 to I want to say 6 p.m. Even the deliveries a lot of times are closed between this time. So you might want to check that out before heading out. Number 16 is smoking. Now smoking is a very common occurrence here. From people in their 20s to people in their 60s and 70s, everybody loves to have a good smoke. It could mean like a regular smoke or a vape, and that's why you have a lot of these smoking bins in every nook and cranny, and that tells you a lot about the smoking culture here. Number 17 is coffee culture. Coffee culture is very much there in France. The French love their cafes. In fact, a lot of times they might even skip breakfast and have like 2 to 3 cups of coffees. And what I mean by coffee here is basically espresso. That's what they like to have. So So if you are just out in a local bakery and you ask for a coffee, that's what they will give you, unless you actually ask for Americano or a lingerie as they call it. Number 18 is locksmith costs. Losing your key can be a bit of pain in the ass here, so you should make sure that you always have your key with you. It can cost you around, on an average, 500 to 600 euros to change your key or to get like a whole new lock system. And that's something that came as a shocker to me, because it's super easy in India to change keys or to build like a duplicate key. Often people here also take insurance for losing keys, so that's how common it is, and everybody kind of knows about it. Number 19 is there's no concept of MRP here, which is marked retail price, as we do in India. In fact, on the packets also here, usually you will not find any prices unless it's actually coming from getting imported from India, because that's a very common thing in India. Vendors here like to have their own prices. So which means for the same packet, for the same thing, you can actually spend 3 euros at one place and like 5 euros at the other. So you kind of have to get an idea of where it is cheaper and figure out that, and then buy things from there. So basically grocery cost can actually fluctuate a lot depending on which vendor are you actually getting your grocery from. Number 20, and something that is super exciting for all my wine lovers. Wine here is at the cost of water. In terms of pricing, it starts at like 2 euros, which is like 180 Indian rupees. So that's how cheap it is here. And in fact, the most expensive wine that I've seen so far has been for what, 15 euros. Be it still or sparkling, any kind of wine is super cheap here. You can get a lot of varieties here. And yeah, the wines are usually very fresh as well. So those are all the 20 facts that I have for you guys in today's video. If you enjoyed today's video, I can make a part 2 of this, and yeah, and I can actually try to incorporate a lot of other fun facts about living in Paris. And if you're somebody who liked today's video, then please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and you never know, maybe I'll make like a part 2 of this. If that's something of your interest, then let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Until then, take care, love you.